Welcome back to Beyond Zenith, the podcast where we go beyond the title. I'm your co-host, Kian Wilkinson, and today I'm joined by Ali Hussain. Ali, for our listeners, please give a 30-second intro into who you are and what Tabs does, and then we'll get into the story behind it.
Amazing, Keon. Thanks so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here. I am Ali. I am co-founder and CEO of Tabs. The company came out of the AI era about 3 years ago with the firm belief that a lot in finance and accounting, which is the largest bucket of just human capital in the United States, was going to shift quite a bit in the world of AI. And so we've been hyper tackled on the revenue parts of finance, particularly things around billing, order to cash, and revenue accounting. And so we build a set of agents and technologies that help kind of automate all of those workflows and help just the office of CFO, controller, just focus on far more strategic things and not get constrained by structured SaaS and legacy ERP systems that have had difficulty moving to this new AI and automation world.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Ali. And we're definitely going to get into more detail around that. But I just want to bring it right back. I know when we spoke before, you made a deliberate choice into being an operator first rather than jumping straight into founding your own company. What made you have those beliefs early on?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. One is I just saw a lot of friends of mine jump to be a founder for the sake of being a founder, um, and I just look back at my own life being in entrepreneurship. There's just so much you need to learn, and I think there are a lot of people who are incredibly talented or sometimes just lucky where out of the gate they start their career entrepreneurially or as a founder. But for me, I've always found that like pattern matching and learning from other teams, being a part of an org, being an operator first, allows you to just learn the different cycles of building. And I often the analogy I give is it's like similar to high school. If you can kind of go see high school somewhere else and then you get the opportunity to go do it again, like how much better you would do it. And so for me, having gotten to see the different stages of growth, it's enabled me to just now be a founder and do things in many ways bigger, better, and faster.
100%. And what would you say like is one thing that you've definitely taken away from going that route, maybe rather than founding straight away from someone that, is fresh out of college and they go and found a business? Like, is there fundamentals that you look back on today while building Tabs?
Yes, I think having the privilege to be a part of growing a company before, the fundamentals I look for is like first just the product you're building. Before, often founders have a often fallacy to be so obsessed with the product and the actual delivery. There's some fundamental questions before that, having gone through it, I now ask myself and I ask my friends or fellow founders. One is the market you're going after large enough, particularly in the venture world? Like we must play in very large total addressable markets. And within that, am I focused on the right customer? Like, can they pay me enough? Do they have enough pain? Are there enough shots at bat? So that's number one. Number two is like, do I know the right team to pull in? And not necessarily the best people I know or the smartest people I know. It's more around like, what are the different types of skill sets and qualities I need to build a successful company? And the third is just like leaning into the technological moment. Like, technology goes through different moments, whether it might be software, on-prem to cloud. We are in an AI era, and you want to be going with the tide versus against it in some ways, especially when technology is going through massive shifts in just capabilities and markets. And so those are three things, having been a part of tech and being an operator and getting to see things both as an operator myself or with other peers. I've now been able to take those learnings as I've been on the founder journey.
100%. And you've obviously talked about high slope as well when it comes to hiring, like high slope over pedigree. Like, do you have examples of like someone you've taken a bet on before that has proved this?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think in a lot of roles, especially in a startup, the number one thing you need is just people who will work incredibly hard, but also adapt with the changes in the org. And often it's very hard to, in point in time, pick pick a person for the job that has that experience. Like, look, as the company gets a little bit later stage, that makes a lot of sense in certain areas. But slope and work ethic are the things where it's just so helpful when you're growing. And so a good example is like one of the colleagues I've worked with the longest. I actually worked with him when him and I started as management consultants at BCG over a decade ago. And then he came in to be the first like sales hire at my last company, and him I got to work together. Now he's our CRO here at Tabs. And like that slope is something I could have identified, but like the actual skill set and the experience we built together. And so that's just a great example of several areas in my career have been privileged to get to work with such talent density.
That's amazing. And I know that a lot of the people that you've got at Tabster today, you've pulled from previous places you've worked with them. Like, what is it about these individuals that makes you call them back and, say, look, we need to build this together?
Yeah, I think one is just there's no better kind of referenceability than people you've worked with. And part of it is skill set. Part of it's just also just camaraderie and compatibility. Like that is so important because when you think about how many hours you put in at work, these people become the average of who you are. And so I think that is incredibly important. Just the privilege of getting to work, and this is why, again, I look to people to be operators in some ways first, is you need to like learn what are the skill sets you don't have and how do you pull them into the org. Like it's no surprise to many. I'm not super technical in terms of actual like engineering. I often need help in terms of product design and those vulnerabilities, but also transparency on what you know and don't know allows you to then build, I think, highly competent teams.
And would you find that there's like a golden thread that goes through each of those individuals where they share similar qualities despite that they have different domain knowledge?
Yes, I think all of them tend to come from very collaborative worlds. They tend to have low ego. They often are very first principles thinkers. They're highly collaborative. And I think they're just like fun and they bring some levity. Like at the end of the day, one of the things that's underrated about work is like it is often very stressful. But you want to work with people who have humor and are fun to be around. And I think that is also equally important.
100%. And one thing you also said to me before was you described Tabs as a place to be where people want to learn company building and then they go off and do their own thing. Like, how do you hold on to people long enough and then also genuinely encourage this as well?
Yeah, I think there's two things that are really important there. One is as you pitch the company to others, you make that a part of the appeal, meaning like people come both because they're excited about the product, they're excited about the vision, but they're also just excited about learning company building. And I think that is a big pitch myself, my co-founders, certainly my CTO Deepak, like we espouse on everyone. Like we want that, like we've been privileged to get that opportunity and we think that a life of entrepreneurship is like a really often stressful, but a really fun and meaningful life. I think the thing we often have in conversation with a lot of these candidates is that we don't want you to be here forever. Like, but we also don't want you to be here for a year. Like, this is a 3 to 4 year journey. If you're here for 7 years, you're either in my job, you're in my seat, or like you've drastically taken on a mandate. But broadly speaking, like this is a 3 to 4 year ride. And you're going to go through multiple cycles to then be able to go on that journey. And so I think those are the two things we do up front, but we also give a time gap so like people are calm and they realize like in order to learn this fully through, you're going to want to see the company at least through an entire 4 year high school cycle before you go feel anxious to try to go do something on your own.
Yeah, it makes so much sense as well in terms of imagine from a product perspective, because you've got all these entrepreneurial people with that mindset that they want to iterate, make things better, and their brain's always thinking about how can we improve.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got that from, the bottom all the way to the top.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
And if we go back to Latch, after 6 or 7 years of being there, what was the specific moment you realized the ERP revenue side was the gap you wanted to go after?
I think it was a culmination of multi-year and then some space to reflect, meaning like in the very early days we knew ERP was like a fundamental part of company operating. So one was just exposure. Second was experience. You start to then you get exposed and you actually understand these systems. Then you try to operate with them. You understand the good, the bad, the ugly. And then I think there was a unique moment where, as I got to experience these tools, it was kind of between 2016 and 2020, or kind of the COVID era, in which you start to also see a lot of market shift. Like you do a lot of things within a single ERP, and then you see vendors come and pitch you on spend management or accounts payable, and then you try to look for solutions where you feel pain, like order to cash or billing, and you find where things are working in market with other vendors or within the ERP, but you also expose yourself to gaps that otherwise, when you are searching in good earnest, you have no good solution for. And that tends to be often a good signal that there may be something there to go spend your time building.
Nice. And when you say that Tab sits in the part of the ERP no one has won, like billing, collections, RevRec, why has that gap existed for so long? And why hasn't Oracle or SAP just fixed it?
It's one of those things where it's such a major workflow. Like, and to tuck it away and say, I'm going to bundle this with your general ledger and your reconciliation tool and your procurement tool. So, one is just like, I think people have underestimated how big of a domain this is for finance and accounting. Our perspective is it's the most critical in some ways. It is where most of the labor is hidden. It is the most intimate. It is the most complex. So one is just broadly, I think a lot of the ERP systems have underestimated that in some ways this is as big, or if not a bigger beast, than all of the other things they have to build in the ERP. The second is it ties to technology, meaning unlike parts that have been more mature around the ERP, like vendor management and employee management, with companies like Coupa and Zip and Ramp and Rippling and Deal and Workday, the actual revenue side has a far more complex data primitive. Like understanding the customer is far more complex than understanding the vendor or the employee. And so I think even in earnest, if the focus was there, the technology to actually understand that complex data was just not plausible until the advent of the LLM in late 2022, and frankly over the last 12 to 18 months as the LLM efficacy has hit a certain tipping point. And so I think the second part of it is just the data complexity was too hard, where legacy systems of record and the way they understand data through structure and human input would have been highly prohibitive to be, or highly gated to be able to build the way we've been able to build here at Tabs.
And was there like a aha moment when you like from a initial first customer or even like recently that you were like, wow, we are like this is something else?
Yeah, I think two things. One is in the early days when we were building, you often have a hypothesis and you get, and I'm a big believer in the early days, you just need to take shots and take as many calls with as many people that are willing to give you their time and explain their problems. And I think the big aha moment was we were on the call with a pretty senior established controller, and he just kind of turned around and said, Ali, revenue's not hard because of X or Y or Z. It's hard because it's the contracts. The contracts are the most difficult element of administrating revenue. They're highly negotiated. There's a bunch of custom terms. There's a bunch of logic around pricing and escalators and renewals and cancellation clauses. And so I think that kind of just moment, hearing that so direct from someone we respected, was super valuable. I think fast forward 2.5, 3 years, just now seeing it in action, seeing the feedback from companies that have been able to keep their finance teams lean, seeing agents automate a lot of the back and forth between one of our customers and their customer. There's just like magic that happens when you just stay heads down and focus and compound with a ton of velocity.
Wow. So that mean do you both your customers can talk to each other via the platform because of the um like you said there, that two customers could speak to each other through the same platform. Is that right? Is that because they have the same platform, or is that different platform?
Our customer uses our agents that can start to speak on behalf of them with their end customer. And so obviously we can interact with our customers, but our customers are now on top of our technology using our agents that are now helping them save time and collect faster by deploying our agents with their end customers.
Oh, I see. Okay, cool. And when we spoke previously as well, you mentioned that you've hired heavily from the big four like KPMG, EY, Deloitte, PwC. How does having accountants in-house change the product decisions you make?
Ultimately, if you look at what a lot of us in vertical AI are doing, it's not just a replacement to SaaS, it's a rethinking of how agents dis- help mitigate the need for first party labor for our customers. In order to build that, there's just a lot of domain expertise. And we've just seen and we've seen this in other domains with companies like Legora and Harvey hiring lawyers, and in healthcare, there's always been a precedent to bring in some providers. And I think for the first time in the depth we are building in finance and accounting, having deep accounting domain expertise to pattern match how we both deliver complex technologies to our customers, but also how we further compound the system to effectively emulate the work of accountants and people in finance. This tends to be a good way to overlay domain experts with technologists.
Nice. And one of the statistics I see is that ERP transformations tend to fail about 55 to 75% of the time. And obviously, you've said that it's not displacing the ERP at all. But like, what could you walk us through what a successful tabs implementation actually looks like end to end?
Yeah, I think, and that's no doubt true. Like, these are high stakes systems, they're business critical. Data can often be a big mess. And so there's a variety of things. I think the few things, and by no means are we perfect. We're getting better every day, getting even better every month, and have significantly improved over the last couple of years as we came to market. I think a few things have helped. One is just really good pre-sale solutioning. I think knowing eyes wide open what the current state in data and systems looks like for our merchants is incredibly important, but also when necessary, understanding and managing expectations, being clear on how workflows will work, where you'll utilize technology versus agents versus business processes, has been very important. So I think one is just like very clear upfront work that allows them the deployment to go very well. The second is utilizing AI in a way where a lot of things that used to be very difficult to migrate data, whether it's a legacy ERP or billing system or CRM or contracts, like us being so AI forward, where everyone in implementation in some ways is writing some code, working with our delivery team to touch endpoints, and thinking through how we can balance not just speed but also quality, have been very helpful. And so I think those are some of the things we are doing to mitigate it. I do think, though, this is not a outsource type effort. Like, we've also embedded all of this through a single experience, from the way you buy tabs, the way you onboard it, the way you have a hopefully really good customer success experience. And I think that has been kind of table stakes in helping this make a lot easier, versus a lot of ERP implementations have historically been a handoff between vendor, whether it be Oracle, several third-party advisors, to outsourced implementation folks, dependencies on internal engineering, and it becomes so many stakeholders. It loses efficiency, and the actual end product has a ton of risk to quality.
100%. Couldn't agree more on that as well. Um, and you're speaking to like 6 to 8 finance leaders a day. What's the single biggest pricing misconception you keep hearing right now?
I think so taking a step back, two big misconceptions that I think finance and accounting tended to be more optimistic with was that they would be able to lock in consistent pricing and packaging maybe at an annual level with some thresholds for approvals on discounts, and that the contract form in which they did business with their end customer would standardize as they scaled up. I think both even before AI, but certainly in the last 12 to 18 months, that has completely become untenable. The level of changes in pricing, particularly with the tokenization of products, has made pricing highly volatile and often being reshifted, if not quarterly, certainly not annually, but quarterly, but really monthly or at a deal level. But on top of that, the level of just markups and changes as people figure out how to sell these products, and depending on how the end customer is comfortable buying it, has resulted in a ton of variability even at the contract level. And so in summary, revenue is just getting far more complicated, which is creating a lot of downstream implications for a ton of finance and accounting teams.
What's the biggest challenge you found with the finance teams?
Historically, they've kind of been left on an island from a systems and process standpoint. They have limited resourcing from their technical friends in engineering. They're often a downstream secondary priority to what's happening for sales within CRM. And they just tend to historically be very selfless in terms of like investment, and then get pretty tied into being pretty manual within whatever ERP system that they have or they've inherited.
100%. And you've also said that the flat subscription model is dying. How long do you think it has left?
I think in some form it's here to stay. Like there's a reason why subscriptions are great. They often get paid up front, they're predictable. When done right, they're pretty high margin. And so there's some really good parts, but I think the subscription as the lead product that guides the entire commercials of how you think about recurring revenue or ongoing revenue, I think is slowly dying, and it is getting augmented with more diverse products that kind of bundle into a package in which businesses sell business to business.
And what's one area that you've seen that maybe finance leaders have struggled with around like consumption models? Because I imagine that's quite difficult for them to forecast.
Yeah, I think forecasting is incredibly hard. So I think, but I think most people acknowledge the forecasting side is going to be hard. I think the consistency, and we've seen this, there's been quite a bit of murmur in Silicon Valley around, okay, is that ARR? What is that? We don't need to get deep into that because I think it's pretty well known. I think the things that people don't realize is how hard downstream this stuff is to administer. How do you compute invoices now that they're becoming more frequent? It's not actually the product data and the usages that is as hard to meter anymore. It's the actual complex math against a contract. I think the third one, which always interests me, is like we're also heading to a gray period on how do you actually recognize the revenue. And almost, it used to be you had a pretty simple flat fee and service model in which the revenue recognition was relatively straightforward. But now, like with all these different negotiated rates, you effectively have a whole plethorium of like just contracts that have very different ways to recognize the usage. And I think rev rec and compliance is already shifting a lot and is very complicated, but is up against potentially a massive just change in how auditors and revenue accountants, etc., have to shift their trade to support these changes.
100%. And like, there's a lot of AI tools out there that like B2B, B2C that are helping like bring in more revenue. But obviously, one of the biggest things I was always told early on was that like cash is king, and the finance function is like what keeps you alive at the end of the day. Like, do you have any success stories where like, you know, you've increased revenue because they've been able to follow up on time, or like, you know, follow up quicker, making sure that things are paid on time? Is there anything that you can share around that with us?
Absolutely. I mean, on average, most companies that are on tabs, prior to tabs, they would, in the US B2B market, most invoices are on a net 30 basis, meaning you invoice and you pay within 30 days. Most folks coming onto Tabs are actually collecting 60 plus days across their invoices, and we're able to reduce that by about 20 days. And so already in aggregate, there's quite a bit of success. I mean, this week I was on where someone referred us because one of their portfolio companies was having covenant risk with their lender because of their liquidity position on collections. And like we were able to solve that completely for that finance team. There's another company that is not going to raise more capital or is going to need to be profitable in the post-AI world. And they were able to turn that around 6 to 9 months ahead of schedule, just given the tooling our agents have been able to do. There's so many stories right now where people on Tabs are foregoing the need to hire huge accounting teams and have started to think about how they reduce some of that G&A to repurpose to revenue driving or producing parts of the function, or be able to further prolong outsourcing accounting. And so we see it every day in, every day out.
And AI adoption is really difficult. Like it's probably one of the most difficult things at the moment. How do you support these businesses to like move away from these processes that they're so used to? And I imagine that, like you said earlier, the finance professionals have been doing this for years. How do you make them shift their mindset?
Yeah, so there's a few things that I think are really important. One, I just think generally I've been absolutely amazed by how forward-looking finance has been in this AI shift. Like the outside of maybe engineering, we are seeing finance adoption of tools like Claude, being able to connect MCPs, has been much higher and much faster than I think any of us could have expected. My guess is there's a few things driving that. One is just those teams have been asked to do a lot more with less, and so from a headcount standpoint, they have to get more efficient. I think the second is they just have to be good stewards of the company's balance sheet and using AI. And as the CFO, are telling HR to do more, sales to do more, marketing to do more with AI, they themselves have to like pick a lane and really champion that. That said, I think there's a lot who are still trying to figure out how do I utilize AI but still maintain auditability and traceability and ensure that really intimate workflows like GAP and ASC 606 compliance is done in a really compliant and safe way. And so I think we've been a really good balance to that, where there's parts where you can BYO AI and bring your own AI to the table with MCP, but there's parts that kind of touch the metal and touch payments and touch compliance and banking, where we're able to give them the benefits of AI, but give them a delivery experience where they can fully understand and fully have control over, where I think doing that on your own or without AI would be close to impossible.
100%. Like data privacy is so key, and like everyone thinks, oh, let's just use Claude or ChatGPT, but then immediately you've lost that data, and finance data is probably one of the most sensitive.
Yes, 100%.
And some AI founders, you've mentioned it already, but are quietly absorbing token costs, hoping it goes away. What happens to those businesses?
It's a wild, wild west. I think last year was all about testing, and everyone said, look, we're going to scale, grab market share, and see what happens on the token side. I think if you're early in your testing, maybe you get away with it longer, but at some point the gross margin pressure wakes up. Companies are burning a crap ton on tokens, and I don't see any short-term relief that token costs are going to go down enough where margin relief comes through just completely giving that away for free. I think we're headed to a world where tokens will be passed through, they'll be sold with some form of margin, and so I think we're in a transitory period in which most services, whether it's software or labor or advisory, will also pass through agent and token costs to the end customer, or provide technologies and services that then allow their customers to bring their own token and power those products via their own token utility.
Nice. And if Tab's mission is making complex revenue simple at scale, What does simple actually look like for a CFO in 5 years?
It is a world where a lot of the things that require a ton of mental muscle and operational lift can be fully delegated to tabs agents, whether that means reading the contracts that sales signed or one of the sales agents signed, whether it's going back and forth on invoicing and collections, whether it's applying payments and tax, whether it's understanding the revenue accounting behind that, whether it's submitting a journal entry. These are all tasks that take mental fatigue and operational burden. We would expect 90+% of that to be handled by an agent that has stored the memory of how that CFO or controller wants to operate the business and just runs on it and only brings up major escalations and questions as if they had that high slope teammate on the team that really is just checking in on one-on-ones in some cadence and confirming major variances.
And is there anything that we haven't discussed today, like that is a misconception about tabs that people don't quite get straight away, that is a lot more simpler about what the product does that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think a lot of people often ask, it's like, do we need another billing tool or another revenue accounting tool or another ERP add-on or etc. And I think the thing I often tell people is like, there's a lot of things that I understand make this feel like your billing and revenue tool of yesterday. What I would tell people is a couple things. One is there's very few products broadly in the office of CFO that have hit a level of capitalization and investment to go build a market winning and completely reimagined experience. And I don't think anyone's ever done that in the revenue category. You may say Ramp has come to that conclusion or Deal or Rippling, but broadly speaking on revenue, no one has. And if you look out 2 to 5 years, working with us, you will see a level of velocity and experience that feels like something you've never felt on the revenue side. The second thing is, this is not your yesterday's tool that is built around structured data and subscription billing and multi-product module piece. We are setting ourselves up for a completely different world in which these revenue models are completely different than we even understand them today. And so the complexity you're about to see will require a completely different type of technology infrastructure. And I think we are at Tabs well equipped to solve that in a way none of the other tools in the market have any first principles in how they've built the product to actually do.
What would you say, like, if there was one thing that would be your biggest differentiator, if you can share that with me?
Yeah, I think I mean, there's many things on the product, like our commercial graph that can understand any form of contract usage, super helpful. I think the thing they underestimate is we are a team, we mentioned earlier, a ton of accountants, ton of really high IQ technologists, technical researchers in AI. Like we're approaching about 200 teammates here in New York. And it's really the quality of service and partnership you'll get with us. We are not outsourcing our implementation. We are not telling you to send a support ticket and get a response in 7 days. Like everything is real time with agents and people. And I think like that level of experience and just quality of support you'll get from a vendor in the ERP space, like it's just uncalled for. Like Oracle hasn't done that, Intuit doesn't do that, Stripe doesn't do that. And I think it's just a completely new way of working with your partner, especially as you're adopting new technologies around AI. And I feel greatly privileged to be able to provide cutting edge product, but also provide such white glove service, which I think you need both as you're going through these transitory products at such an interesting time in technological history.
Thank you for sharing that. What's one thing as like the CEO and co-founder of Tabs that you'd want someone internal, external, like your customers, to take away from your company, like the way that you guys come across, the culture that you drive?
I think like there's full humility in the mistakes we've made. Like this is very hard stuff. Like we're not out there building a very small point solution. We are building a set of technologies that can own all of revenue, that touches very complex accounting. It touches very complex integrations with pretty archaic systems like NetSuite and Salesforce. It touches very high sensitive velocity things like payments and banking. And so what I would say is that even in the last 6 to 9 months, we've hit a complete turning point in technology that is highly scalable for some of the most fast-growing companies in the world, like a Cursor. The actual level of where we're headed, we're only getting started. Like what people will experience in Tabs today will be the worst example of Tabs, because like the ambition of the product, the agentic automation, etc., is going to result in such changes to how advanced and how unique the product gets. And so your investment in us in partnership, we're both highly grateful for. We're building around the pain points and feedback you give us. But like what I expect the flavor of Tabs to look like a year from now will be so much different and magical, which I think is a completely different way people have experienced generally fintech and finance and accounting software.
And what's one thing that you would say to someone maybe on the outside looking at Tabs thinking, is this a company I want to join? Because I know you guys are actively hiring as well.
Yeah, I think if you want to just come in, like there's a variety of things. We would love to meet everyone, and I obviously am biased, but I think this is an amazing place to work. Mostly not because of me, but all of the amazing other teammates we have here. I would say if like at the end of the day, and Ken, you and I were talking about this before, like you want to be in a magical place like New York. You want to experience the city, but also be in a highly intellectual and highly intense but meaningful place that will teach you how to be a part of an entrepreneurial environment, learn a domain, whether it's a domain you already know or a domain you have ambition to learn about. It could be an accountant who wants to learn how to do customer success. It could be a former banker who wants to do sales. It could be an amazing engineer who wants to leave big tech at Google or Meta and be a part of a startup. Like you're going to learn that domain, but you're also just going to get exposure of what company making becomes. And like your downside case or whatever case you have is like you learn how to be an entrepreneur. Your upside is in a very short period of time, you get to advance your career on merit and be a leader or be a technical lead or a sales lead. That opportunity is just like limitless at a place like this. And I hope some of the listeners will come apply and join us.
Awesome. And right now, building a startup is both the most exciting and the hardest it's probably ever been. What drives you on the days when it's tough?
Two. One is just a great appreciation to just get to be here. Like, I think people often take for granted, like when they started, when you are a 1-person or 2-person team with no technology, no customers, no revenue, and getting to, in 2 to 3 years, get to see so much change. Yes, we are talented and we work hard, but a lot of that is just good graces and privilege and luck. And I think looking back on where we were and how far we've gotten tends to be a motivator, because with that comes great responsibility. I think the second is just the people and the levity, and like when it's tough, we make sure that it's tough because we're solving hard problems. It's not tough because we're caught up in politics and bureaucracy. And I think a combination of those things, though there will be bad days, allows a lot of us to just go get a good night of sleep or just go enjoy a good personal moment and be back the next day and be ready to roll with just tackling the problems heads on.
100%. And is there anything you would tell yourself at the start of the journey of building Tabs from where you are today?
I think just enjoy the moment. Like there's on the same time, like as you scale up, there's different set of challenges, different set of people related time and things you just can't do because you have to think more about scalability or security and all of that. The early days are such a fun time in building, and they're obviously uncertain times, but the naivete of that time and the hustle, they're some of the most exciting. And I think a lot of people don't realize how fast, if you're successful, that time will pass. And so I think both for me and for a lot of entrepreneurs who've gone through it, like that life journey is so exciting and invigorating. And I think I wish I had savored the moment when I was in it 3 years ago.
100%. And out of interest, is there one question you'd like us to ask the next founder we have on the podcast?
I think there's a constant question around like it's very hard with your coworkers to be like this is going to be easy work or it's going to be a normal job. It's just not. There's going to be intense moments, there's a lot of hard hours, there's a lot of personal sacrifice. And I'd love to hear how other founders and entrepreneurs balance that with their team. I think that would be super exciting to just learn like I truly believe there's no hard alternative to hard work and putting in the time, but I think it's a continuous journey of learning from each other on what are some of the trade-offs founders are willing to make to ensure that people fully do not burn out or find small moments, not only just to rest, but also get some creative, reflective time so that teammates and themselves are not so caught up in motion in perpetuity.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that, Ali, and thank you for joining me today on the podcast. It's been great to have you on, and thank you for sharing your journey and what Tabs is currently doing.
Of course, Ken, I very much enjoy the podcast, and I'm honored to participate this week.